Want to have less stress? Just give up this one thing. So what's the one thing? Well, we're looking at the idea of conflict occurring when someone, you or I, moves away from what's actual, what is. And I'll start with a subtle example, which is if someone yawns, right, we may have a initial thought, a reaction, yawn always equals tired. But, now I'm not saying that when you yawn you're not tired, but I am saying the fact is what's actual is just simply that one has yawned. And what isn't actual is the assumption, the thought, that every time someone has yawned, it guarantees that they're tired. So how do you see that? Not just this example, but the structure in general.
I feel this is a valuable structure to look at because there's a difference between observation, someone is yawning, this is just a thing someone is doing, and saying, yeah, they are tired. This is an interpretation of what is happening. And this is, of course, like a simple example, but we can find this structure, I feel, often in daily life. Are we observing or are we interpreting what is happening? And if we are not aware, it's an interpretation. And what is an interpretation? An interpretation is the ego applying what it has learned in a lifetime. So it's taking a look at past experiences and projecting those past experiences onto what is happening. Because the ego only knows what it has seen. And therefore, it can only take the knowledge it has already consumed and apply this to what it's seeing. And this prevents it from seeing what is actually happening. How do you feel about this?
You know, it's a valuable point when we look at the ego and what it's seen and the implication behind something already being familiar, right? What does it mean if something is familiar? Well, odds are it's some form of program, something that we have taken and maybe unknowingly attached to. So as we grow, right, past and future are something that we talk about a lot here because of the implications of sort of the valley that one can fall into when thinking or interpreting in relationship to the past or future. So when we get sort of more clear around that structure of, like, how does the interpretation even start to unfold? And then we see, okay, more often than not, the conflict is going to be born through the interpretation which so frequently unfolds in relationship to the past or future. Because past or future, more often than not, is going to lead us down this content route. Now, how can we live in this world, address content without falling down the spiky hill of content? What can we do to live, to see, to acknowledge and understand content without being stuck in it? What do you think? How do you see that?
I feel like coming from this neutral observer perspective at content, so not getting overexcited, not getting caught immediately in your own interpretation, and seeing things as if you have seen them for the first time in your life. You know, like an explorer or like a scientist. without the ego analytical part. Just being open, or maybe like a child. That's it. Like a child, you have never seen this before, and then you're just amazed. Like, look at this tree. It's wow, I've never seen this before. And just the little details without judging, and creating the space also in your mind. Because as adults, we are trained to come up with interpretations, also with labels immediately. We look at the tree. Oh yeah, that's a tree in itself is a label already. It's a being that's growing, and I feel it comes down to space, and at least pretending you've seen this for the first time, and then you see things that you're seeing for the first time.
So that phrase, let's build on that phrase, seeing things for the first time, right? Because to a certain ear, that might not exactly make so much sense. Like, what does it mean to see something for the first time? How does that actually feel? How does that unfold? So what we're getting at with that phrase is to see something for the first time is implying that you don't necessarily have the memory or the thinking in which memory stems from in breaking down what it is that you're seeing. And right, you can bring that scientific or that childlike perspective as long as it's curious, it's explorative, it's wondering, rather than, you see, the slippery slope here is humans tend to fall into this I know it place. And when we know things, we no longer have the curiosity, the exploration, that essence which allows for the space for something to potentially be seen in a new way. So this psychological space is really hinting at an unoccupied mind. Because, well, the truth is that many of us may not have the energy to see it, but our minds are constantly chattering. And everything that we're speaking on here is to just subtly, and maybe not so subtly, allow for you to potentially just get a little bit more space. And with that space, you might have that ability, you might start to notice the nature of the constant chatter. So now, what do we do? What do we do when we start to notice that our mind is constantly chattering? Not necessarily practically, but how does one see and use what they see, that constant chatter, as a lever which can sort of be a gentle guide in moving through this life naturally? And we just have to not chase the unoccupied mind, but see clearly that the noticing is a win. Because you cannot and you will not ever improve something that you don't admit or recognize could be sharper or more accurate or just a little different, right? We don't even have to have a direction for this. So the real thing here is the noticing without judgment. To notice that one has yawned without judging that yawn in relationship to being tired. Now, what do you think there? How do you see that?
I feel this is valuable to notice your own chatter, because it's a mirror. It's a mirror of yourself. And the thing is, the mind has been programmed. Everything you went through life, and this was turned into programs, and now they're running in your mind. And especially like what your immediate environment has told you as a child, this has a significant influence on the chatter, or this is the chatter in your mind. And often we are not aware at all because we are so used to it. The thing is, when you're used to something, you fall into unawareness, and then you don't see it anymore because it's normal. It's completely normal to you. You don't question it. And then becoming aware and just observing, like, what kind of chatter is going on in my mind. And this tells you a lot about yourself. It's a mirror. It's something about, it tells you about your energy. It tells you about your perspective of yourself. It tells you about how you view the world. And it's quite revealing, I feel, to observe. And as I heard you say, the first step is observing and not judging. And this is the valuable part, not judging, because judging is again something that's coming out of the ego. Judging comes out of your past programming. So this is tricky because you want to observe the chatter, but when you judge the chatter, you are in the chatter. That is, the judging is the chatter. And so again, observing your judgment when this comes up, this is revealing. It will tell you a lot about yourself.
See, that's precise. It's not only the noticing of the chatter, but the noticing of how we judge our chatter. And so, hey, it's still a win to notice that you're judging your own chatter, because you're at least putting one step forward and noticing that you have a constantly chattering mind, right? And I'm not accusing you of this. This is, if you'll have some courage and look at it, this, I can tell you for a fact, this is the nature of humanity. Because, right, and it's not a race, it's not a culture, it's not a specific religion. I'm talking about every human on this planet. Now, many won't admit it. Many will run from this fact, right? Because, well, if you start to notice the chatter, and then you start to notice the judgment of your chatter, as Myra said, it becomes so blatant that this is you, and that your chatter is a reflection of what you are. Your relationship to yourself, your chatter, in your ability to observe that chatter without judgment, is literally a mirror. It is the only compass anyone will ever need. It is the book of humanity. And as you play this game, see, the book of humanity, no one can buy this book. It's a book, an ancient book, which each of us has the capacity to read and learn from. There's no wisdom on this planet, in this world, in any dimension, greater than the book of humanity. And that is exactly what we're talking about here. How do you access that book? How do you tap into something much beyond you? How do you tap into the thing which created everything, right? And I'm not saying that in the sense of you become someone with superpowers. You become someone who is superior than others. That's not it. That's not it at all. That would be the ego losing its awareness in relationship to its awareness. Like, because it's tricky here. As we go down this path, you will become more sensitive and your life will become smoother. You'll have less stress. Everything will become easier and smoother. But with that being said, if you fall into this, any sense of superiority, that's not it. That's not it. So we have to, well, we don't have to do anything, but the truth is that we have a beautiful opportunity in front of us. And this opportunity is just built upon the non-judgmental observing. As you play the game, you'll start to notice open loops, vicious cycles, or pendulums in your life. And as you bring awareness to those structures, which I've just listed, you'll start to see clearly that we're something more than thought and feeling, in that we have an energetic capacity. And as our relationship to that energetic capacity compounds, becomes stronger, more clear, you'll start to notice inevitably, without choice, without force, without effort, you'll start to naturally see patterns arise in relationship to the nature of your specific constant chatter. And as you watch, observe, listen, and feel that constant chatter, you'll have the potential to create something like a natural, effortless discipline. Because when you see so clearly that there isn't a choice anymore, that to live stuck in the mud, the swamp of one's content, is the inevitable domino, which creates an energetic drainage, which then compounds into a raised likelihood of being trapped, and therefore, not seeing fires, not seeing poisonous roots before they grow, right? But the beautiful thing is, you can see these roots if you play the game and you understand your relationship to what you are, energy. And before you get to the energy part, you really just have to start watching yourself. And as you watch yourself, this whole sequence naturally is going to unravel because, well, the pathway to the truth is not necessarily always the same. There's going to be many peaks and many routes to each peak, but the structures behind the route, the structure behind traveling to a peak is always going to be the same.
Yeah, I feel, you touched on so many good points. It's like installing an inner guardian that alerts you every time you fall back into your old patterns. Anytime this chatter is coming up, and every time you view the world through those glasses of the chatter, because this is what's happening. You're unaware of the chatter. This kind of like twists your view, or it puts on a certain glasses, and then you view the world through those glasses and you can't see anything else because you're so focused on this perspective. And raising the awareness, having this inner guardian, this can be trained. And this is the good news. So, and this is something I feel, this is a structure of freeing yourself of those, of the chatter, of the negative energy. And so the raising the awareness and creating the space to let the awareness take over and just observe. And how do you feel about this?
It makes sense. It really does. And one thing I want to emphasize is, right, we heard Myra use this phrase, which is a good phrase, inner guardian. And I just want to build on the fact that the inner guardian, right, inner, it's not something different from you. The inner guardian is not something outside of you. It is not something detached from you. The inner guardian is you. It is you. And of course, maybe we have parts of us. Maybe there are different aspects to what we are. But I don't want you guys to listen to this, hear the phrase inner guardian, and be like, so how do I come into contact with this thing? Like, it's you. It's literally you. And you don't have to come into contact with it. You are it. What you have the opportunity to do is to understand all the things which block your communication with the inner guardian. It's not by saying, how do I reach this place? How do I get there? You're already there. You're there. You just have to study, observe, watch the patterns, the structures, the sequences which block it. In the constant chatter, which this entire conversation has been founded upon, that's one of the big blockages. If your mind is never silent, you will not ever have that inner guardian, that river of life, that thing that is nameless, communicate with you. But if you can quiet your mind through having an insight into the nature of this conversation, the nature, the diabolical deviousness of the ego's constant chatter, that self-obsession, that division, that loneliness, fear, greed, anger, that all sprouts from the constant chatter. If you can see that for what it is, then maybe that space is created for that inner guardian to be heard. It's like a flute. It's the gentle flute. And the constant chatter is that mother, it's that trumpet. It's that blaring trumpet. It's that Honda Civic, which they cut the exhaust and it just is so loud. But it's not quality. It's not quality. Sorry, Honda Civic owners. There are some good Honda Civics out there. So, I appreciate you guys. I really do. I'm grateful. And if you enjoyed this, I write a daily letter. You'll probably like that if you enjoyed the video. Link in description. And anything else you want to say?
Yeah, I appreciate you guys too. And I write a weekly newsletter, and I think we put the link also in the description.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So let's go. Let's go. All I got to say is if you're on YouTube, I'd love to hear your response. You know, what was the nugget? What piqued your curiosity? What, anything. Just if you want to share some thoughts, but, make them structural thoughts, please. And for the podcast, if you're on Apple or Spotify, drop a review, a rating, have a wonderful day. Let's go.